Welcome to the Software Report, a leading information source on software companies and solutions. In this episode, we speak with Ray Villeneuve, CEO and board director of BriteCore, a cloud-native core insurance platform built for property and casualty insurers and MGAs. BriteCore supports policy administration, billing, and claims in a unified system, with configuration tools to launch new products and built-in reporting and analytics. The platform also includes portals for agents and policyholders, and is used by more than 100 insurers across North America. Ray has served as CEO and a board director at BriteCore since 2021. His background is in scaling SaaS businesses, with work spanning go-to-market execution, product roadmap planning, and company building. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Ray, thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to be with you.
Likewise, RJ. Good to see you.
So there's a lot of solutions out there in the insurance space, and rightfully so. Insurance is such a major sector. And so maybe to kick off is to explain the particular solutions that BriteCore offers.
So to your point, insurance is vast, it's huge. And let me kind of get us into the right zone here. We're a strictly P&C policy administration system supplier. For the moment, we are only selling in the North America market.
Mm-hmm.
And further, we are carved out a niche in the sort of tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 space. So kind of sub-billion-dollar carriers is our home court. That's where we're focused.
Excellent. And just to give even more context, how many roughly are in this market?
Yeah, many hundreds of customers. If you add the emerging and even legacy MGA customers, you're well over 1,000 companies in that world. You know, RJ, our intelligence shows that maybe 20 or 25% of these companies have modernized to something new. And what they're otherwise working with is a legacy system, perhaps homegrown, often homegrown. It could be a legacy platform that was developed like literally 30 years ago, even before the web era, kind of an old school client server type era. And there is just a lot of technology that's very, very dated. And the way that shows up for customers is it works, but they're not able to take advantage of all the latest technologies. And as a result, they have a lag in profitability as a result. So BriteCore is totally focused on helping customers improve their combined ratios. Everything we do, every kind of conversation and argument we have inside the company about prioritization is always goes through that lens. Like, how is this tech? How is this new widget? How is this new feature helping customers ultimately become more profitable? And that's both top line and bottom line. You know, acquire additional policies, open up new lines, make changes to existing lines. It could be in the flavor of helping customers have a stable environment to acquire full books from other carriers. And at the same time, zero in on time-intensive parts of the overall policy management workflow. And then naturally, that's a rich area for AI, and we're doing a lot in that regard as well. So again, taking dead aim at combined ratios really drives us.
And so it sounds like it's a full platform. It's end-to-end. And, is that a point of differentiation why one of these folks would go with BriteCore over a competitor?
Yeah, it is, RJ. I mean, for sure, it's an end-to-end platform. We do every component of it, all the way from underwriting through policy administration, claims handling, billing, of course. And there's a very integrated and advanced kind of first-class citizen analytics capability in the product. So that's all built in, executive dashboards, that kind of very high-end kind of visual real-time capability. But it's all end-to-end. And we do see some customers who do the Frankenstein thing and try to meld multiple modules together into one overall solution. Super cumbersome to manage multiple vendors in that regard. The vendors have to kind of cooperate with each other. The APIs have to be rock solid in that environment. And it can work, and we do see it working. But the result of that often is that it's labor intensive in the IT departments.
And how long has BriteCore been around? I know you've been there for several years, but what's the history of the company?
Yeah, so in 2010, the company was started by two smart cousins in the Midwest in Missouri and got the company off the ground, bootstrapped it, initially selling to small farm mutuals in that region. The companies got together and said, hey, we like you guys. We like what you can do. We want to fund an overall policy administration system. The then technologies that they were using, either homegrown or spreadsheets or whatever, were very, very dated. So two founders put their heads together, built an architecture that was built for scale from day one. So, they made a lot of really, really good choices, which were not obvious in the 2010 timeframe. First of all, it's going to be pure cloud from the jump, right? And in 2010, that was not obvious, right? Especially for insurance, which is a very conservative market. And secondly, they chose AWS, which is really prescient. AWS is where G Cloud, but AWS was the technology they chose. Third is they wrote the whole technology in Python. So again, not an obvious choice back in 2010, but here we are, 2026, and Python is the language for AI. So the whole code base is written in Python, and all the smart kids are coming out of school, colleges with multiple years of Python experience. So that's a really big advantage. And then it's a little more subtle, but another advantage is from day one, they wanted to have an architecture that separated source code and configuration layer, right? Source code and settings. So we are now at a point where we update our entire customer base every 2 weeks on a sprint cycle. So all of our customers get all the fresh bits. There's no notion of having to test a release on-prem with a customer, going through that whole process. It's continuous, right? The configuration layer is set up where customers can make their own changes. Like a North Star for the company is to enable customers to go full self-serve. They don't have to call us to make changes, to make rate changes, to add new lines. They can do all this themselves with kind of a fairly simple user experience. And then for sure, they don't have to call their other vendors who come at them with big professional services fees. That doesn't exist in the BriteCore base. And all of those decisions were made in the early days, and we've been kind of building on those decisions as we build the company.
Mm-hmm. And to get a sense for the stage the company's at today, I believe you have some outside capital. Would you categorize yourself still in like the, maybe early to mid growth phase? How would you describe where you're at?
Definitely power growth phase now. We're a real company, we're profitable. We have attracted capital from two firms. The first was Radiant Ventures, a New York City firm. Two young founders spun out of Bain Capital where they were early partners, young partners, Harvard Business School guys. And they led the Series A. And then shortly after that, brought in Warburg Pincus, blue chip private equity fund to lead the Series B. So those two rounds happened in the kind of pre-COVID era. I joined in the summer of 2021, so going on 5 years here, and we did sort of a top-off round with that change, and that was sort of co-led by Warburg and Radiant. So Warburg and Radiant are the two primary investors in the company.
Excellent. And is the goal here, I mean, obviously you want to continue to grow and to an extent like hyperscale, but are you focused on amplifying or improving your feature set? Is it you kind of land and expand? Is it finding new customers? How fast can you go into the market or penetrate the market?
Yeah, so the architecture that I described gives us another hugely unfair advantage, which is easy implementations. I mean, this is insurance, that's complicated stuff for sure, but it's far, far easier to implement BriteCore than it is for all of our competitors, candidly. I was on a sales call the other day, and a customer was talking about a change. I'm obviously not going to name the competitor, but going from an old version to a new version. This is actually on-prem to cloud, and it's a 4-year process for I think about a $350, $400 million premium carrier. And that to us is so frighteningly stunning. That's probably a 9-month process to get a customer from point A to point B with all the lines, all the states, all the forms, all the deliverables, all the reports. The architecture enables all of that. And we're pressing that advantage big time. We also know that some of the kind of name brand incumbents out there have some of that same phenomenon. I'll give you an example. There's a couple of companies, East Coast State, both about $100 million in premium. One is a BriteCore customer. They've been with BriteCore for several years. The other company works with one of our competitors, a name brand competitor. Our customer has 1.5 FTEs managing the whole BriteCore environment. The whole company is 59 employees. The other company, again, on the name brand competitor, selling their mid-tier application, has 11 FTEs in IT. And I think the head count there is about 110 people. So it's just completely different. Again, this whole notion of taking dead aim at combined ratios, there's like a glaring example. I have many examples like that for companies of various sizes. That advantage is what customers are seeing when they talk with us. In a nutshell, they can do more with less.
Excellent. Would like to understand the team composition there at BriteCore. Did you bring in folks when you assumed the helm, or were folks already there? Or I imagine there's some mix.
So there's a really good team in place here who are kind of part of the legacy group, distributed worldwide. It also became clear that there was an opportunity here to bring in people who have seen and driven excellence in other high growth, high tech, leading edge kind of companies. And so we made a lot of changes in 21 and 22 timeframe. In a nutshell, we're now about 100 employees. I think 102 is the number, FTEs. We dramatically reduced the worldwide footprint. So I think we're only in about 9 countries now. There's a little bit of a kind of the Americas flavor in our dev environment. We have a very strong team in Argentina and in Brazil, where we found some serious talent down there. and of course, North America. So since coming on board, I basically top graded. That's kind of a strong word, but that's what we did. The entire executive staff, and then they and that group in turn did the same thing with the next layer down. We kind of cherry picked the very best talent in the company that was, in place and brought them in and got them direct on where we're heading. And, it's been good. So all that heavy lifting was done, 22 timeframe. We were pretty much done with it. And then from then it's grow from there. So that's where we are.
You have a lot of experience as a CEO or president of a company. You've done it multiple times over. I'm curious if you have like some philosophy you've developed. I mean, you walked us through, what you did at BriteCore, but do you have some general insights, like start with the core?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm no guru, RJ, but I'll just
Yeah.
give you a few things that I think about a lot. And you end up working with your investors and maybe some of the other CEOs in their groups who maybe have different experiences. Look, I think there's a few kind of big things. One is all these companies are all about the people. It's all about the talent. You need people who are smart, motivated, accountable, work well with others, play well in the sandbox, as they say. That's really, really, really important. In fact, that's probably the single most important thing. You just have to have the right people. Whether you're running a super low tech company or a super high tech company, you just need that kind of group. And so that's what we have here now. It was not necessarily the case coming in. So that's really important. Second thing I'd say is back to the do more with less mindset. Companies of our size amongst our competitors would maybe have twice the headcount we have. We just don't need that headcount. You just kind of streamline processes and you kind of combine roles into people who are maybe a little sharper, more accountable, have a little bit more kind of street experience. And that helps big time as well. Those are two that come to mind. And then let me just say a third thing, and then I'll get off that podium a little bit. You have to be able to simultaneously manage lots of complexity and lots of ambiguity, simultaneously projects, people, programs that all have different time horizons, right? So you're managing things that are like have to be done like right now amongst your team, others that have to be done within the next 1 or 2 months, and then some are quite a bit longer term. And you can just map that to the business. In your product roadmap, you've got some right now features that need to be built, you've got some longer term things, and then you've got kind of a broader vision of where you're going, well down the road. So you've got to be able to kind of be comfortable and fluid with all of those things and kind of how they all interact with each other. And then it comes down to prioritizing. Where are you going to spend your time? Where are your people going to spend their time? Prioritize, focus, and win.
Do you have a regimented strategy and process for identifying and interviewing candidates?
Yes. So the key piece of that is many people in the company see every candidate before they come in. And it's interesting because if you're hiring, let's say, a director level person, that person might go through half a dozen interviews, and different people based on their experiences and, with the kind of questions they ask, they see different things. We all collaborate on that and do a go, no go. For our maker talent, our developers talent, if we have a posting or if we have an outbound recruiting process, we might see, as many as 200 candidate CVs. And from there, we might down select to say 100 who are truly qualified on paper. And then we give all of them a code test. And just the idea of having to do a code test might filter off some folks. But the people who actually pass that code test, it's like less than 7% pass the code test. Mm-hmm. After they do the code test, our engineers who are like the hiring manager for that role will have a live code test in a live settings to make sure there's no monkey business went on during the code test. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really highly filtered. And we do that not only for developers, but also other roles in the company that are, technically flavored. Super rigorous.
For those non-developer roles, folks you've recruited in, what's been the success rate of those individuals?
Well, once people actually get through that process and, they're good people, right? Accountable, energetic, friendly, but a mindset of like they want to be the best version of themselves, right?
Right.
I mean, look, you're not always 100% on that, but, in general, and the vast majority of the folks are like that. Once you have all that, you sort of get out of the way a little bit of the people and let them do their thing. Give them the broad guidelines and let them do their thing. So that's what you do. And the other thing I would say as a CEO, for companies that are kind of under 100 in ARR, and we are one of those, you still have to be very, very on top of the details. You still have to kind of micromanage all the way up and down to make sure everything is working well. So you never give that up. And I think some people gloss that over and, sometimes you end up off target. So you got to stay very involved.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we like to touch on is kind of the value that capital partners have brought to the table. Aside from the financial capital, are there kind of areas where Warburg and Radian have truly been kind of value add?
Yeah, for sure. So each of them have peer level sessions. Both Radian and Warburg have peer level sessions for CROs, for CTOs, and so forth. So our people participate. Sometimes they dominate some of those meetings, actually. So that's super helpful. And because the nature of what they do is they see lots and lots of portfolio companies, they can help us benchmark, where we should be on various metrics, as well as where we should be with time to market, close rates, all of that. So all that's like super helpful to make sure you're top decile type company. And you get that. Look, they'll help occasionally with recruiting as well. And they've been really, really good capital partners.
Excellent. Back to the question of your kind of background and having been in leadership positions, I guess ultimately, what do you attribute your success to?
I mean, get knocked down, dust yourself off, get back on the horse and keep going, right? You got to stay fresh. You got to stay current with tech. You have to stay current with business models. You just stay fresh to stay in the game. And maybe that's the number one.
Yeah. We're coming up on time. I have two final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Wow, that's a great one. Yeah, there's many, but one that kind of immediately jumps to mind is the former CEO at NetApp. His name is Dan Warmenhoven.
Mm-hmm.
He was almost the founding CEO of NetApp, Princeton EE, early executive at HP, like as a young guy. And he had run a small public company, and then he moved over to NetApp, and it was very kind of nascent. And I had the chance to work for him for a while. And, you're in those staff meetings and you have one-on-ones with Dan, and he just looked at everything through what's the most efficient solution to this problem. He's EE by nature, very smart guy, and many of those solutions had to do with technology leverage, small amount of technology investment for big outcome. So he kind of always looked at the world through that lens. And it's like, rather than throwing people at a problem, like what can we do here to use technology to enable us to solve that problem in a super efficient way? There's many, many lessons there, but that's just one that stands out. So Dan, I was a big fan of Dan. When I left there, I was like, man, the hardest part about leaving there was leaving that environment with Dan. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to that earlier, do a lot with a little and like eliminate the waste. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity cause or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, Wounded Warriors.
Excellent.
I'm sure a lot of people have tracked what they're doing, and these young people, given so much. And many, many of these people came from backgrounds that were not privileged backgrounds. And, with passion about our country and what they gave up. And then you see people on the other side of their injuries and how they still have that spirit. They still have that energy, that spirit. It's really something that is compelling.
Wonderful. We'll add a link in our post to the charity. Ray, I want to thank you again for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Likewise, RJ. Good to see you.